We're very excited to share our Friday with you here with a favorite presenter of ours, Rebekah Demirel, talking about trauma-informed decision-making for mental health professionals. We want to start, though, first, and there are some details on the slide on the bottom part of the right side if you have questions about those kinds of things. But we wanted to start, and we actually just revised this. We've been doing a land acknowledgement for a while because we do always want to, and even though this is a virtual experience, that we want to acknowledge the Coast Salish peoples of our lands that touch all the waters and bands within the Squamish, Tulalip, Muckleshoot, and Duwamish nations. We are virtual, but we want to take time about this to really acknowledge history and work for justice in these tribal communities. And if you want to know more about the stewards of your lands, we'll put a link in the chat. We also want to talk about a labor acknowledgement, and I haven't really figured out a best way to do that until I saw an example. So we're kind of testing this out, but I think I really wanted us to acknowledge that a lot of our institutions and society are based on stolen labor, slavery, exploitation, and that still exists for many today, or the legacy of. So we just want to acknowledge that also is what brings us here and how we are here today. So we'll introduce the MHTTC network here in just a moment, but before that, just want to really celebrate Pride Month. There are a lot of different ways and avenues that people celebrate Pride, but we are very excited to help present various resources and events that you can get from the entire network. So we'll put a link to that, but just personally had a first ever neighborhood Pride family block party, and that was just really exciting. We had a wonderful local drag performer and barbecue picnics and all of that, and it was just really lovely. So very excited to start that tradition in our area. If you haven't been to one of our events, just want to quickly share, we're a nationwide network. I forgot to say my name. I'm on the Zoom though, you can see my name, but I'm one of the co-directors of our Northwest MHTTC, and we've been going for we're in our 5th year, and we have 10 regional centers. We are a nationwide network supported by SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and we have 10 regional centers. We have a national Hispanic and Latino center. We have a National American Indian Alaska Native Center and a coordinating office. And so we do workforce development, free training, and that sort of thing. And we're most tied to Region 10. So that's where we're excited. Here at the Northwest MHTTC, we are based in the University of Washington, Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. And, we support workforce development. We do free training, events and resources. We also do a podcast, which Rebekah and I just recorded. So that'll be out in a little while. But we just want to make sure you have all the different ways, online courses that you can get free training and TA in your field. And so if you aren't signed up for our events or newsletters, we can show you how to do that in a bit. We also know that sometimes topics, can be sensitive. Topics want to always be respectful when we're talking with each other or talking in the chat. And so our network has just endorsed using this slide to be, person first and strengths-based, knowing that people are coming from a lot of different perspectives on a lot of these topics. Some housekeeping, it's a webinar, you're muted, you're off camera, but we will be taking questions towards the end. Rebekah, if you want to give me a thumbs up, I think that's how we have normally done that with you. So if you have content related questions, please put those in the Q&A. If you're just responding, saying hello, the chat is where you'd want to do that, or reach out to our team. We have our awesome program manager, Gabriel Orsi, in the background here. If you have any tech issues or whatever, so please let us know if you have any help. We will get you the slides, the recording, and all of that, and a certificate of attendance if you desire, and you'll hear an email about that. Lastly, we do have an evaluation. Your feedback is really crucial, and we always look at every single detail. So if you can fill that out, it's anonymous, takes like 2 minutes, be really great and helpful to get your input. If you don't like the personal code that they ask you for, you can put any letters and numbers you want. We just want your feedback. So SAMHSA doesn't care what that is. This is not a repeating event. And then lastly, they just a disclaimer, they fund us, but they don't know all the details of our events. So before I turn it over to Rebekah, I want to make sure we acknowledge the poll. I think, are the results being shown right now, Gabrielle?
Yes, they are. They've been up for a
Excellent.
little bit, so I'm happy to take them down, but people
Awesome.
should have
Thank you.
had a chance to see who's in the room.
Excellent. Great to see all the breadth and such. You can close that little box if you don't want to look at it yourself. So thanks so much for everybody participating. And now to the good stuff. Rebekah Demirel, we're so happy to hear you and see you today. Rebekah is the founder of Trauma Integration Programs, providing training and support to social services personnel, medical and educational professionals, emergency services teams, and corporate organizations for more than 20 years. Her background includes, just wait for it, 14 years as a BC ambulance paramedic, 22 years as a paramedic trainer, and over 2 decades as a registered clinical counselor specializing in post-traumatic stress and loss. She is also an East Asian medicine licensed practitioner and acupuncturist, generating another depth of understanding to her counseling work. Her unique skill set is informed also by her own traumatic childhood and teen years spent on the streets and in the foster care system, giving her a special familiarity and empathy for trauma and loss. She continues to be an active volunteer and advocate for people who are unhoused in her community and beyond. I want to say I've known Rebekah for quite some time and so grateful to have you here again. You were instrumental for provider well-being post-COVID hitting our worlds, and you're back, and everybody always loves what you share, and we're so happy to have you back. So with that, I will turn it over to you. We've done this with Rebekah a lot of times. Please give a word describing how you are feeling today. So you can do that through a variety of means. And usually it might take a second or two to show up. But here we go. Wow, tired wins again, Rebekah.
There it is.
There.
The big letters, tired. I have a little of that too. I love this part. Yeah, keep on pouring in your answers if you can figure out how to do that. Sad, excited, glad, sluggish. Okay. It is Friday after all. Uncertain, sleepy, joyous, happy. I'll say sunshiny. I see sunshine out there today. Let's just give this another 30 seconds or so. Woo! Look at all those.
I got to keep clicking, I guess.
Yeah. Demoralized,
that part.
Motivated, curious.
Wow.
Achy, thoughtful, interested. Okay. TGIF, relieved, alive. I'm tilting my head from side to side because they kind of appear like that. Cool. Productive, hopeful, motivated. What's mine? Sweaty. I'm always sweaty when these things start, and then I get rolling and feel more relaxed when I'm connected to myself. Wonderful. Yeah, when do we call this done, Christina? Do we?
Yeah, whenever you want, we can. It'll continue to populate. So if people want to put that in, we'll certainly be saving this because it's just sometimes
a nice poster.
Powerful. Well, just and sad to see some of the more really kind of deep sorrowful ones, but this is reality. So I know that's why we're here. And that 250 people joined today says something. So I'll let you take it from here. So I'll stop sharing, but we'll keep the results going in the background. Thank you, everybody.
One of the responses is cute. Feeling cute today. That's nice too. Okay. Well, hi everybody. Geez, what do I want to start with? Let me do my own territorial acknowledgement. I'll let you know that I'm living in beautiful Victoria in British Columbia in Canada. I moved back here 5 years ago from Seattle. I'd lived in Seattle for 8 years and really enjoyed being there. So my acknowledgement is that I am occupying some of the unceded land of the Coast Salish Lekwungen-speaking people who've been sustained body, mind, and spirit through their relationship with this land for thousands of years. I hear and heed the call to learn more about my colonial history and the ongoing impacts of my privilege, and to be part of the challenging work of reconciliation. So I am going to share my screen here and show you some pretty slides and talk, and really looking forward to sharing this with you. I'm excited. So this is wisdom to know the difference. And as most people know, this is part of the serenity prayer. And it's how we acknowledge that we've made choices in our life that may not always have been the best choices for our health and well-being, or for the health and well-being of others. So this is a real chance for us to go deeply into what we know about ourselves, to be surprised about what we learn about ourselves, and to do it all in a trauma-informed way. And we hear trauma-informed a lot, but just to remind all of us that being trauma-informed is a way of widening our window of understanding. It's a way of asking not what's wrong with somebody else or with ourselves, but what happened to others, what happened to us, how that the experiences that we've had impact the decisions that we make in life. And whether those are our day-to-day decisions or broader decisions, ones that we make at work, ones that we make on the fly, how can we find ways to really be integrated with all the different ways that we know? I'm going to talk about the ways that we know with our mind, and the ways that we know with our heart and our spirit, and the ways we know with our gut, those really deep instincts that we have. And our trauma-informed care starts with really just noticing, and how our awareness gives us the agency to actually make the choices that feel best to us. And I also want to discuss how early childhood trauma really affects our ability to make decisions. It's when our brains and nervous systems are forming. So when trauma happens to us really early in life, it kind of impacts a lot of what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about others. Those beliefs turned into a whole big belief systems, and we impress that on the whole world. So, yeah, I want to really keep applying that trauma-informed lens to recognize the way we make our decisions, and then to start to cultivate even more ways. We all have our ways of caring for ourselves, but to cultivate even more ways of caring for ourselves, and finding new ways to evaluate what's going on in our body, mind, and spirit. And that gives us these broader ways of looking at ourselves, others around us, and the whole world. Big stuff. So any of you that have done let's see, just gonna click that out of there. Any of my webinars know that I always like to bring in self-care. So just to start, let's do some breathing for our vagus nerve. And I'll be talking a little bit more about the vagus nerve, and I'm also developing a whole new presentation on the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is our 10th cranial nerve, and it is really involved with tuning into our nervous system and helping us switch from that fight or flight sympathetic drive back to a parasympathetic nervous system response, where things are more solid and integrated. So to tonify and to strengthen our vagus nerve, we're going to do this breathing together. So, and this will be good for me just to ground me. But as you're sitting here, wherever you are, feel your seat in your chair. Your feet ideally should be touching the ground, just so you get that grounding through the soles of your feet. And we're going to do a breathing method where we breathe in and we hold it for just a second and we exhale a little bit longer. And that's really the key to calming down the nervous system, is that little bit longer exhalation tells the vagus nerve, okay, let's just rest and digest. Let's get back to that nice solid place of the parasympathetic drive. So let's do a few of these together. Close your eyes if you like. I'll do that. We're going to breathe all through our nose, and we'll breathe in for 6, hold for 1, and exhale for 8. So let's just breathe in. And exhale. Let's do 2 more of those. Awesome. This is a great thing to do throughout your day. Whenever stress comes up for you, you can do it sitting at your desk. You can do it walking. You can do it sitting on the bus. You can do it when you're in a session with a client or any stressful time. And it's a great one to share with others too. I like to say, keep it in your back pocket. So always hang on to this vagus nerve soothing. So one of the resources, the reading resources I've provided is a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It's always hard to say his name. Bessel van der Kolk. And The Body Keeps the Score is a wonderful, somewhat science-y book, but if you really want to delve into something that talks a lot about the nervous system and about the parasympathetic and sympathetic drives and all this really interesting ways he has about talking about the top down and bottom up ways of healing. So the mind and the body, integrating those things. And he talks about awareness being the most important part of finding agency. It's not that it equals agency, but it's that it's a way of accessing that agency and the ability to restore choice to our nervous systems. So we're not just coming from kind of a knee-jerk reaction. And a quote from Bessel van der Kolk is, neuroscience research shows the only way we can change the way we feel is by becoming aware of our inner experience and learning to befriend what is going on inside ourselves. And I love that word, befriend. It's like, instead of being at odds with, I just got to fix myself, is to notice that, yeah, we feel how we feel, we think how we think for a reason. It's part of what's made, what's created us from the experiences that we've had. And so our awareness is the way we start to befriend all of those parts of us and not try to push them away. Okay, so decision-making styles. So have a look through this list here, the knee-jerk, the FU, the oops, sorry, never mind, the I'll please everyone, the my way or the highway. That does come up once in a while for me. The I'll teach you a lesson, the sanctimonious sage, the balanced present human. So have a look at all these yourself and just see if there's any that might apply to you. The knee-jerk, for sure, is from the fight or flight response. This is when we feel like we have to do something because we feel stressed, we feel endangered. So something comes up, and we feel endangered when we feel like we might be wrong about something. And so that's when sometimes the knee-jerk reaction can come up, and it doesn't always serve us best. And sometimes we just feel really angry and we're just kind of doing something to punish somebody. That would be the FU. Or sometimes we just do something dismissively. That's kind of an FU too. the I'll please everyone, that's also part of the fight or flight response. It's, how do I find a way of keeping everybody happy and keeping all the plates spinning at the same time, right? My way or the highway, you know what? It's also a fight or flight response because we're trying to protect ourselves. We're feeling in this threatened place where we have to find a way to, either run or fight. I'll teach you a lesson. Fight or flight. Sanctimonious sage. Well, that could be fight or flight too. It could be coming from a place of, I need to be right at any cost. And I'll just do it by, making it look like I'm like the perfect angel. Or maybe sometimes we're the balanced present human, or maybe we're a combination of all of these things. So something to look at, right? It's just the awareness, and the awareness where we start to befriend ourselves and befriend our nervous system is where we can go, yeah, I do all of these things, and it's okay because I'm learning. Important to learn. So how the hell do we know what to do? How do we know what's the right decision or not? When I look at this picture, when I see the guy on the cliff with the rope on his back, and I don't know, if they're planning on, maybe they just came up, but it looks like they're planning on going down. I think of the little submarine that was in the news and on its way down to the Titanic, and how, the people that all went inside it, they probably had all different thoughts about whether this was a good idea or not. And there was the young man, was the son of the Pakistani fellow, and he really didn't want to go down. He really had a strong intuition that this was not a good idea and that it may be really dangerous. And yeah, it's really sad to look at that. So I'm stirring with that today. And sometimes we know what is right, and that gets overruled. That gets overruled by another authority. So how do we know what is the thing that's best for us to do, that's best not just for us and for others to do? So I've talked about head, heart, and gut, and I want to kind of narrow those down a little bit. That the head, think of it as our intellect. It's useful. It's, of course, very useful. We use it all the time in our work and all of the decisions that we make. When we want to appear knowledgeable, when we want to have the right answers, it's our outward face of what we know. And it can get overruled by other ways of knowing. It can overrule other ways of knowing by being the authority. And that's sometimes we know something in our heart, in our emotions, or in our gut, and our intellect overrules those because it says, no, this is what you need to do. This is what the statistics say. This is what the boss says. This is what, another authority says. So yes, it's useful, but we can't depend on it entirely. And especially for our healing, if we could think our way out of all the messes that we've gotten into, if we could only use our mind to think our way out of them, we would have done that because we have strong intellects, especially in our society. We really, really value the intellect. And it is valuable, but it's not the only knowing that we have. We have our heart and our feelings. And of course, our heart and feelings can feel really open and expansive, and sometimes even dangerous because they feel like they are overruling everything. And I know in my life, I've kind of run with that, and I've made decisions just with, oh, I love that person, or that I really care about that. And all of my sort of executive functions go out the window because I'm only depending on that. It can, yes, totally drive our decisions. And if it's connected to our gut feelings, then that can also be confusing because it might be hard to differentiate what feels like survival and what feels like something that's truly from our emotions and our heart, which is kind of a deeper spiritual place to come from. I love making these slides, and I know sometimes it can feel like there's a lot of information coming at you. So I'm conscious of wanting to slow down a little bit, wanting to slow my talking down. And you will get the copies, you'll get all of these slides so that you can review them, and you'll also get the recording too. But in real time here, I just want to be aware of slowing down for you. Now, the gut and survival instinct is kind of our oldest and deepest sense of knowing. It's really even pre-verbal where our gut instincts reside. Our gut instincts, these really primal instincts, can get damaged by trauma. This is where trauma really can damage what we deeply know. And gut, the expression of gut really comes from where we feel it in our bodies. When we think about where is it that we know, where is it that I know in my body that something is right or wrong? It's in our guts. And there's something called the enteric brain, where it starts with our mouth, it starts with our esophagus, and food goes down into our stomach and goes through our small intestine, where most of our digestion takes place. And actually 95% of our serotonin, which is that feel-good endorphin, that gets produced in our small intestine. So yeah, our guts have a lot to do with what we know. And when we're only trying to depend on our guts, then sometimes that can cut off what we know in our hearts. When we're only coming from a survival place, it can cut off our emotional center, and it can cut off what we intellectually know. So when we integrate those things, that's where we really get the deep knowing. And here's the enteric brain, this gut and brain connection. 95% of our serotonin is produced in our small intestine. I used to think it was in the brain, but this is what's called the enteric brain. And all of our digestive disturbances, so, according to psycho-neuro, the mind controls the nervous system, controls the endocrine system, controls everything. And our digestive disturbances are related to emotional stuff. So things like Crohn's disease, things like irritable bowel syndrome, those kinds of things are related to emotional disturbances, which come from our trauma. Stress, of course, as you know, any human knows that stress increases gut issues. And then gut disturbances send signals back to the brain. And so we get this continuous loop. And really, there's lots that can be done for digestive disturbances, but what really comes back home is that we need to heal from the nervous system. We need to heal from the bottom up as well as the top down. We need to heal our thinking and our beliefs, but we need to heal our nervous systems by connecting with our bodies. I just threw this in because I love Mary Oliver's poetry. She talks a lot about nature, this very deep, wise person she was. And she says humans are complicated and we can feel fragmented until we learn how to accept and integrate who we are. And this is more than just words. This is a lifelong practice. I'm, continuously working on this. And the more trauma that we've had, the more self-care that we need. I need a lot of self-care. I continue to give myself as much self-care as I can. I wake up early in the morning. I have my meditation and my qigong that I do, which is a movement kind of like Tai Chi. I do some push-ups and stuff like that, and just kind of shaking myself out, all those things, and a little bit of yoga. I just have to do this every day to keep on integrating, not just the past, but the present. life, the world is kind of a crazy place. And I was talking with Christina earlier and just saying part of our stress and overwhelm is that we have access to so much more information than we ever did. So continuing to give that attention to ourselves and to allow ourselves to feel and to honor those feelings in whatever way that we can. Sometimes we might feel really angry at work, and we're not going to start kicking things around and yelling at people, but we need to find a way to off gas, if you will, that kind of emotion that comes up in us. And through the body is a great way to do that, to after work, to make sure that you do something to, grip your fists and breathe really deeply and yell and run and whatever you need to do to try to process that emotion. And you'll know when you've processed it because you will feel better. You will feel relieved from it. Got another little self-care thing for you here. So this is a 3-center meditation and really simple. It's basically Qigong, and Qigong is part of Chinese medicine, Qi meaning energy and Gong meaning work. So again, I'll just invite you to feel your seat in your chair, feel your body wherever it's at, get your feet planted on the ground, and even take your shoes off. When people come to me in my counseling office, I almost always take my own shoes off and put my feet on the ground, or sometimes I'll just curl up my feet in a sitting position in the chair, and I always invite them to do the same, because when we can feel our feet and rub them on the ground, it's so much more centering for us. So you don't have to close your eyes for this, but you can, and I will direct you through it. So as you're sitting there quietly and you're breathing slowly, and you might even want to do that 6-1-8 breathing again, and sort of breathing in for 6, then exhaling slowly for 8. So we're breathing into our abdomen rather than, of course, our lungs are up in our chest, but we're allowing the diaphragm to expand so that our abdomen also moves with our chest. So take your dominant hand, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to use my right hand, and start waving it towards the top of your head. Breathing. And I've got my left hand on my belly. I just kind of did that instinctively, so you might want to do that. So you're pulling energy into your head. Do a few repetitions of that. Now let's change to our chest. And just the same motion, just kind of waving. Just like a wave in nature or branches on a tree with the waves, pulling the energy into your heart, your emotional well-being. And breathing. I'm enjoying it. I know it's a little bit silly, and I'm a silly goose, so I'm just enjoying it. And the same gentle hand motion. Now, let's use both hands. Pull towards our belly. And just breathing. And just giving a little care and acknowledgement to those 3 centers. Yeah, just a little meditation for you. Thank you. I did a sing-along last night with this woman. Her name is Susan Ellington. And this singing, there's this funny song. She basically writes all of her songs. And one of them was Sing for No Reason. And it's still going through me that there doesn't have to be a reason to love ourselves and celebrate. And that at any time during the day, we can use this, the breathing method, the 6-1-8, and we can do this for ourselves. What needs the energy right now? Is it my intellect? Is it my heart and my emotions? Do I need to open my heart to something? Or do I need to really tune into that gut instinct? So there's always something that we can do for ourselves. And sometimes it's the simplest things. So I talked about how our knowing can get damaged, and especially when we're young, when things happen to us when we're young. And I say our knowing gets damaged because not just our gut instincts can get thrown off and our emotions from our heart can get thrown off, but also our prefrontal cortex, actually our brain chemistry, can get damaged by early childhood trauma. And I say the executive functions in the prefrontal cortex are things like emotional regulation and clear decision making, and being able to differentiate what may be something that we're imagining compared to something that's actually happening. So some of the ways that our knowing gets damaged by is through emotional abuse. So whether that's early or whether it's something that's in the present, ongoing, or any time where somebody has emotionally abused us, called us names, and told us that we were useless and that we didn't have value. It's somebody that really pointed to that. And gaslighting is a big one. When we know something happened, when we saw that something happened, we experienced that something happened, and we're told that that didn't happen. I didn't say that. You didn't see that. You imagined it. And we see more and more of this in the media, in all of the different ways that things can be twisted. And sometimes it's really hard to know for us what is true and what is not true. It's confusing, and it can it can sort of twist what we actually know. Sexual trauma especially is something that damages our knowing, and especially when we know what happened to us, we know what we experienced, and then that is paired with, no, that didn't happen. I didn't say that. You didn't see that. You didn't feel that. You imagined it. And then we lose touch with what we actually know. And for me, I know that part of my journey has been to recognize that there have been times when I know something, but I second guess myself, or I ignore that knowing. A red flag will come up, and I just kind of put it in the background. And that's from past trauma where there's been abuse and the gaslighting has happened. Racial, gender, cultural violence, all of these things go, of course, hand in hand with the gaslighting, because we get told over and over again, no big deal. You're overreacting, right? When we feel our voices aren't heard, when we feel that we're not being listened to. And then we get cynical. And we get angry, and we lash out at other people. And this comes from our hope being crushed over and over and over again, and having insufficient support. So of course it's hard to make decisions that feel good to us, that we feel solid in, that serve us well, that also serve the greater good for other people. When all of these things are part of our history, and not even just our personal history, but collective history and world history, this is happening all the time. So we need this constant coming back to ourselves in order to find the resilience to walk a solid path and know what we know. I take a little drink of water here. No healing without feeling. And it's often the hardest part, because feeling is painful. And especially when we want to access, when we access the parts that we don't want to access, right? When we've spent a long time defending and building our walls around those feelings so that we don't feel them. When we have a lot of defenses, feeling is really scary. However, it is the gateway to our knowing, to actually coming back to that solid place where we actually know what we know and we can make the decisions that serve us best. We gather all the courage and insight from facing our fears, and that's how we can tee into those instincts. It's a lifelong journey. So any of you that have done any work with Gabor Mate know that he is, he's a great trauma expert. He's a great human being. And I've known him personally for a number of years now. He wrote the foreword for my memoir, Nothing's for Nothing, author of many great books, including, do I have that here? I don't even have his newest one here. Oh, The Myth of Normal. That's his newest book. And I'll tell you a funny story about Gabor Mate. Is he was in Victoria here and on a book tour for his newest book, The Myth of Normal. And we saw him at the University of Victoria. And he's a guy with, years, decades and decades as a doctor and this trauma expert. And, you can't get online in any kind of forum without seeing Gabor Mate and quotes from him, and just the wisest, most amazing person. And he had just finished this incredible talk, which we were at, and he was doing book signings. So he's there just, signing books, looking exhausted. He usually does look exhausted because he does too much. And all this, huge lineup of people are there. And so my husband and I decided we would pop over and just wave to him, just say hello. And so we popped over, and he's got his head down and he's writing. And we said, "Hey, Gabor." And he looks up. And as soon as he saw us, his whole face just lights up. Like he just looked like, "Oh God, somebody that knows me." And we said, "Hi, Gabor, how you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, good. Was I okay tonight?" "Of course you were, hun." And so that's what we said to him. And we had to laugh. We just, waved. He looked like he wanted to come hug us, and we just kind of walked away. And it's bye. You got a lot of work to do signing books there. But even with all that he knows, even with all those accolades, his question was I okay tonight? And it just goes to show, there's a beautiful vulnerability in that, but it just goes to show, how do we actually know whether we were received or not? We can feel that. I can actually feel that right now from you, believe it or not, even though there's this little inkling in me, am I okay? I feel the connection because I feel the connection with myself. Anyways, that's just a little story I wanted to tell you about Gabor. Love this guy. He says the essence of trauma is disconnection from ourselves. Trauma is not the terrible things that happen from the other side. Those things are traumatic. Trauma is not about what happened to us. It's what we do with them. The trauma is that very separation from the body and the emotions. So the trauma is where we separate from ourselves and we start responding in ways related to our beliefs about ourselves because of what happened to us. It's not that it's not part of it, but it's not the whole thing. Trauma is not only what happened to us. Grounding. So now that the weather is getting warm, I hope where you are, it's certainly a nice day here. Don't forget to find ways to ground with nature. Taking off your shoes and walking in the grass. I remember living in Seattle and Green Lake just being a wonderful source of a place that I could walk around, look at the water, look at the birds, take off my shoes and walk on the grass and look at all the beautiful trees. So please find a way to do that today. Any small way that you can, even if you're working in a downtown space, when you get out for your lunch break, and please do get out for a lunch break. Don't just sit there on your computer, stuffing some food in your mouth. Get out, have a little walk, find a little patch of grass and take your shoes off for a minute. Just try that and it will make you feel better. And it will maybe bring back some of our discussion today and hopefully make you feel connected again. We get a lot of practice ignoring our feelings because there's so much coming at us. There's so much that can make us feel overwhelmed that it's worth it. This is a worthy practice to actually go back to the simplicity of, what feels like yes, what feels like no, where do I feel it in my body? And we can do this in really simple ways, but this is something to do yourself and to share with your clients, to share with your children, to share with your family. When you know that somebody has had a lot of trauma and had that deep knowing impacted by that trauma. So how does yes or no feel in your body? Also noticing what's going on in your mind. So we're talking about the top down and bottom up again, but where do I feel it in my body when I feel yes, for instance? So let's just do this together for a sec. Think of something that you definitely love. Definitely, it might be a person, it might be a thing, it might be just, I love the sunny day, I love Fridays, I love sitting here talking to you. So for me, I feel it right up here. I feel it almost a tickle, almost kind of like a little tickle in my chest. And worth it to really try to narrow this down. How does that feel? How do I feel when I feel that something is a no for me? So let's just take a moment and think about something. And, it doesn't have to be something traumatic, but something that, like, I really don't like wasabi. I know it's supposed to be something that goes well with sushi, but I really don't like it. So if I think of wasabi, there's a definite no, and I feel this pull down across my pelvis and right down into my gut, right down into my pubic bone. I feel the no in my body. Might be other places I feel it too. I think I feel it in my shoulders. I think my shoulders tighten forward. Right? So I just wanted to give you some examples of, for me, what feels like yes and what feels like no. And then to start practicing that in your day, to when we're thinking about what we're going to wear for the day, going into your closet. What is speaking to me? Oh, it was the kind of gray shirt today, and I have an orange sweater. I love the color orange, so that spoke to me today. That felt like Or sometimes I'll put on something. No, that's not it today, right? And I know this feel like very, very basic kind of decisions, but that's how we start to get accustomed to knowing what our bodies are telling us. What feels like no? In even which way am I going to take a walk? Which way am I going to drive today? What decisions am I making in the workplace? Talking about this decision versus another. And again, just going back to the body and remembering what yes feels like and seeing if we can tune into that when we're making decisions. So again, narrowing it down, here's some other ways to find this decision-making process and to, again, use this for ourselves and share it. Back to the body, breathing, getting grounded, and taking your time whenever you can. If it has to be a really quick decision and if you're feeling put on the spot, you've got time to take a breath. So take a breath mean, how long does that take? Like 2 seconds. Take a breath, give yourself that time, claim your space. Sometimes writing it down, if you've got the time to write it down, if you're sitting in a meeting, or if you've got time afterwards, write it down. The pros and cons list, it's an old-fashioned way of doing it, but sometimes it's really helpful. And then asking questions, is this decision that I'm asked to make, is it in alignment with my values? If I make this decision in a broader perspective, is it in alignment with my values? Here's a big one. Who or what is impacted? Gee, if only our policymakers and our politicians would sit down and do this. Who or what is impacted by my decision? How's this going to impact my friends, my family, my clients, my city, my country, my world? How is this impacting people and things around me? And talk it out. Find somebody to talk to. Counseling, if you don't already have somebody that if you have an employee assistance program that covers it, especially because I know it can take a bite out of your wallet. But even if you can give yourself the gift of a good counseling session once every 6 months, even if you can't afford it otherwise, sit down with somebody that can really reflect back to you what you're saying and help you find some clarity. Just having a sounding board or a good friend who's really good at that, do that. And then plan and breathe and see if you can find a place that integrates your head, heart, and gut with your decision. Here's the big one. So what if, this is what we're all terrified about, what if we're wrong? What if we make a decision that doesn't turn out the way we hoped it would? What if everybody around us is saying, no, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong? How do we find a way to actually do it anyways without coming from a sympathetic nervous system response? How do we find a way to really feel solid in what we're doing? And what if we do make a decision that doesn't turn out the way we hoped or the way we thought? So why, I ask you, why is making a bad decision so scary? How do we react when things don't work out the way we think they would? Do we get defensive? Do we try to double down and try to lash out at other people to show them how, well, you were wrong back then, you didn't do that. And so, we try to obfuscate, right? We try to point fingers other places if we feel like we've made a bad decision. I don't even like the word bad, but we use this, right? We do use this. We right and wrong, good and bad, up and down, black and white. This is another way that our nervous systems separate. We bifurcate everything. We turn it into this or that. But there's lots of, juicy stuff in the middle. I'm actually most curious about what's in the middle, what's between the two poles of what we think is right and what we think is wrong. And so why do we think or believe that we are safe when we're right? Again, back to the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. This is, if we feel like we're in a position where we've done it all right, we somehow feel that we're elevated and we're separated from what might be scary. We feel like sometimes we have the control so that that we're not as vulnerable. I think that's what it is. We don't feel as vulnerable when we're right, so we feel safer. And this is, again, coming from that nervous system response where it's really past trauma that informs that way of believing and responding. I always find that it's useful to go back to try to find the root of when we started thinking that way. Where did that come from? And often it comes from how we were parented, how we were told what was right or wrong. And so, I mean, this is where racism and sexism and cultural issues come from, is they're impressed upon us when we're young, and then we start to kind of build something around that because that's what we believe is right. And if we want to be in, if we want to feel safe, then we want to believe what our caretakers believe when we're young. Sometimes I go off on a tangent, but I hope you get what I'm saying. Here's one of the key things when we start to heal our past trauma, and when we start to heal our ability to make clear decisions, is this ability to change our minds, the ability to not always be right. In fact, even if we feel like we are making a decision that isn't right, that it's okay to change our minds. It's sometimes a really scary place to be, but if you start to feel yourself able to do that, it's like when your mind and body say one thing and something else is the answer. It's this ability to change our minds and make a different choice. And I know I've noticed this in myself, that I can be saying something to somebody and something in me will say, no, that's not the right thing to say. It's not the kind thing. It's not the best thing to say. And so I might even stop myself right there and say, you know what? I'm going to make a different choice with what I'm saying to you. I'm going to change my mind about this. And I like actually being wrong, because when I notice that I'm wrong, then this starts to happen. And then I realize, oh, healing is happening in my nervous system. This flexibility and resilience is starting to occur instead of this rigidity of either being right or wrong. There's something in the middle where there's a pivot that can happen. Brene Brown's another person I love. And she is talking more and more about polyvagal theory, which is, like I said, another webinar that I'm working on. And polyvagal theory is mainly just about the vagus nerve I was talking about earlier, this 10th cranial nerve that impacts our face and our throat and all of our vital organs and really communicates with our nervous system. And Brene Brown says, trying is messy. Yeah, trying to make a decision and find the right way and flip-flopping back and forth, and then finally finding the place that feels right. It might look really messy, and that's okay. It becomes more and more okay when we're kind to ourselves and when we start to befriend our nervous system and realize that, you know, that's what recovery is. It's a bit of flopping back and forth. And so, yeah, it can look messy. And she says, vulnerability is not knowing victory or defeat. It's just understanding the necessity of both. It's engaging. It's being all in. And sometimes the bravest and most important thing you can do is just show up. Just show up for yourself. Just be present in that meeting. Just be present with your friends and family. And just be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to feel in my body what feels like yes, what feels like no, and what feels like what's good for me and also good for you and the greater good, and trying to find something that really, really works. It can take time, and there's a lot that we may need to sift through to get there. So breathing and the kindness and the awareness and the head, the heart, the gut, all of these things integrated is how we get there. Okay, I want to do another self-care thing with you. And by the way, these self-care exercises will also be in the handouts and the resources available. Alternate nostril breathing is actually a yogic technique. And look at this beautiful baby and his big nostrils. So we're going to sit quietly, and we're going to be using our thumb and baby finger to plug our nostrils alternately. So I'll talk you through it and walk you through it. If you want to just, again, feel your seat in your chair, feel your feet on the ground, and just breathe normally. And you can close your eyes if you like, because I will talk you through it. So we're going to use our thumb to close our right nostril, and then inhale through your left nostril. Now use your pinky to close your left nostril and exhale through your right nostril. That's all there is to it. So breathe in through the right, plug it with your thumb, and exhale through the left. Inhale through the left, plug it with your pinky, exhale through the right. Let's do a few more cycles. I'm just going to do a couple on my own, so go ahead. Thank you. This is another really good one to keep in your back pocket. I just want you to notice right now, do you feel dizzy? If you feel a little bit dizzy, you might have been working at it too hard. This is a super gentle thing to do, to really feel if you're being gentle with yourself. And it balances the right and left sides of our body, the right and left sides of our brain. It's a very ancient technique to balance. And when we think of right and left brain too, think of the left brain being our the calculating part of our brain, the forceful, can't think of the right words. The right brain being collaborative and creative, that kind of thing. So it's balancing those left and right sides of the brain. It's balancing our sinuses. It's balancing our breathing. This is great for if you have a headache, but it's also something that, if done forcefully, is going to give you a headache and make you dizzy. So just to notice, it's a beautiful technique. And the more you can practice it and not do it in a way that's harsh, the more you are befriending your nervous system. It's kind of a diagnostic tool, if you will. Need another drink of water. This is just kind of a question to think about for you. Are you a confident person? Do you often feel confident? And are you really confident, or are you just trying to look confident? So I'm just going to speak really bluntly about a political figure, Donald Trump, somebody who is trying to project confidence. Do we really think that he's confident? No, right? I think this is a person who is deeply, troubled inside and deeply insecure. So are we confident? Are we integrated? Or are we just trying to project that constantly as a defense? Who told you that you could or couldn't do things in life? So if you have damage to that, your ability to feel confident, to feel grounded, where does that come from? Right? Again, no healing without feeling. So continuously, that's why journaling is so great. Continuously coming back to being curious. Oh, where did that come from? You know, bringing things from way back here in the vault, bringing them over here to a place where they're side by side with us, and we can go, oh yeah, that's where that came from. Okay. And then it loses all of that power to control us. Maya Angelou. She's always said, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Ongoing, constant, daily, minute by minute, healing, awareness, caring, befriending ourselves, befriending our nervous systems, using the tools, being vulnerable, being willing to be wrong about something. Sometimes those decisions that we make that we feel really strongly about, and others are saying, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Sometimes it does turn out great, and sometimes it doesn't. That's just part of life. Decision making, having the wisdom to know the difference, is just knowing ourselves. It's just coming back to the very simple things about what feels like yes, what feels like no, what feels like something in between. Does maybe mean no? Does maybe mean yes? Does maybe even mean I'm not ready to make a decision? And sometimes that's actually where the real wisdom is the I'm not ready is where the investigation takes place, so that we can start to pull apart that ball of twine and all those twisted experiences we've had and go, oh yeah, there's where that came from. There's where that came from. Oh, I see where those ideas came from. I see where those beliefs came from. And I'm okay. And you're okay. Thank you. I'd love to have some questions from you, and you might have already put some questions in the chat, and which is being monitored by Christina, I believe. And yes. I would love to have some ways of talking about this more with you.
Great. We do have some questions. So
okay.
Thank you, everybody that put some in. So maybe a quicker question. I think you touched on a little bit. What's the age range that childhood trauma really affects us and our future beliefs? Is it kind of birth through 18 or, yeah.
Taking a breath. So even in utero, and this has been scientifically researched and proven that even in utero, the unborn child is susceptible to the trauma that's happening to mom. So one study that was done on women who were pregnant during the 9/11 disaster, the babies had MRIs done, and their emotional life was tracked over years, and it was found early that there was issues with their nervous systems. And so even in utero, we can be susceptible to trauma from our mothers. And then as tiny infants when we're born, depending on the kind of environment that was happening. I'll give you an example. So when I was a fetus inside my mother, she had a lot of trauma. She had a lot of violence. And so I was a child born with already a nervous system in fight or flight mode. So yeah, early it happens, even before we're born, and all the way through our development. Our brains get fully developed theoretically by the time we're, in our late teens or early 20s. And yeah, I mean, that's more early childhood trauma between the ages of early development in utero and say 15, I would say, is probably the window of early childhood trauma.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions that relate to your paramedic trainer experience and active service as that. One was an interesting question about the physical heart and emotions, being that the heart is a pump and it's a container, and we talk about it being kind of that center of our emotions. So that was just the question: is there a connection between the heart as a muscle, our emotional center, which we know also, of course, is in our brain? So just any perspective on how our whole body functions together, I guess.
I think so. For me, very much so. And being somebody that yes, was a paramedic and have done CPR on people many times, and really felt that connection, really felt that soul connection from the person. And whether they, made it, were revived or not, could still feel that soul connection. So it's I'm grateful for the experience of having been a paramedic and having had that real privilege of being that close to people. When I might have been the last person to speak with them or to touch them and to feel that spiritual release, and I often would feel that. So it's something that took a long time for me to release from my body, and I feel like I held it for a long time until I was guided and helped with that through counseling and some spiritual work that I had to do, because I carried it thinking that I needed to carry those people in my soul.
Yeah. Well, in this question, I'm going to broaden out a little bit, but someone is kind of curious about the paramedic profession, but a lot of folks, on this webinar right now have to make maybe not the same kind of life-saving decisions, but close, I think, at times. So I think the question revolves around: how can you be confident and swift in your decisions when there are these really intense situations, and in some cases, life-saving or other kind of safety-related decisions? A lot of people doing crisis work, a lot of people doing first responder work or co-responder work, a lot of people work in a setting where things have to be, swiftly dealt with. How can folks best bolster their ability to do those jobs well when you may not be able to stop and breathe for 5 minutes before you don't have that time?
Yep.
And I know from experience. So how, if you could go back and tell yourself then, what would you recommend?
Yeah. I would say, first of all, be willing to make the wrong decision and do the best you can, and to breathe and to keep noticing what feels right, and to keep looking at the broader picture. How is this going to impact people around me? How is this going to impact things on a larger scale? Like I said, if our policymakers and our decision makers, our politicians, were actually stopping and looking at something besides how they were being perceived and how the media was perceiving them and so on. And we do this on our own scales, right? How is my boss going to perceive me? How are my coworkers going to perceive me? how are my clients going to perceive me? And if we can just come back to a place of, I'm just going to do the best I can and be willing to be vulnerable and be willing to try again, being willing to try and being willing to repair. You know, sometimes we make a friggin' mess out of something, and then we have to go, wow, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the things that we humans, we don't like to say, you know, I'm sorry, or I love you, or thank you. I mean, those three things are really important. So I'm sorry, thank you, and how can I make things better? You know,
Yeah.
or thank you for helping me. I feel right about this. Or I'm sorry, I really don't know right now. I'm going to do the best I can. It's really just being a human. And if we can do that, wow, we're modeling something super valuable to everyone around us.
Mm-hmm. We had a great webinar earlier this week around de-escalation and having, you know, some perspective on that. And we can put that, may not be ready at this very second because it was 2 days ago. But I think we talked a lot there too with our presenter about being as prepared as you can. So that's taking care of ourselves, right? We're the tool that's in the toolbox, right? Is our being and skills that we bring. And so being as ready as you can. I think what you said, being ready to act with all the full capabilities that you have, and then be able to debrief and process how it went for you, for the experience, for the people involved. And I think that's what, you know, someone put in the chat, how do we make sure, you know, the burnout and other stressors don't negatively impact our ability? And I know you talked about that at the beginning, and it will, and it can, but I think trying to, you know, just replenish yourself both on a minute to minute basis and regularly with not just the padding, you know, self-care, you know, we that really is it's not a answer to everything. It's how you live your life, right? And so I think so many of us want to be similarly consistent, and that's probably what's hard, is you want to take the hat off when you're done, but you also are the same being going into these spaces, right? So how are you caring for yourself? You can't just put it in a box.
And your consistency doesn't come from, you know, I make all these decisions in this way. It comes from actually where those decisions arise from. That's what can be depended upon once we get in touch with that.
Yeah. Next question, which I can definitely have some thoughts, but I want to hear what you think first. Someone who's new in a case, you know, manager position, providing, you know, educational stability and for months been saying, call me if you need anything, but I can't really meet every need. And how do I develop more specific but still open abilities? You know, how can I be present, supportive without trying, you know? And I think it's sort of like, how are you when you don't care? You know, it's those kind of things we just get used to saying. That was my first impression, like, call me if you need anything. But I mean the specific job. Yeah, right. So maybe being more specific, but how do you just, I think, generally try to have that open presence with people, but also know I can't be here at all times.
Right. Yeah. And we can't please all the people all the time. We've all heard that too. And remember, if we are trying to please all the people all the time and keep all the plates spinning, that is a trauma response. That comes from, I want to feel safe. And so I'm trying to make sure that everything around me looks okay. Right. So messy seems really scary when messy is just, you know, actually reality. So, you know, it's something to keep an eye on about our authenticity. And am I comfortable in my own skin? Am I authentic wherever I go? Am I authentically me wherever I go? And can I just keep on working that? And if I notice that I'm being inauthentic, can I just stop and say, you know what? I don't actually really feel this way. When you ask me how I'm feeling and I go, oh, I'm great. No, I feel shitty, right?
Yeah. We know what fine stands for, some of us.
Yeah. And it's so, and you don't need to fix it either. I just want to be authentic by letting you know I had a really tough weekend and I'm okay right now, or I'm not okay. right? But it's just being authentic and allowing other people to be in on your humanness. You don't have to shellac over yourself all the time. It's not befriending our nervous systems to be that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so just underscoring the context when people are trying to maybe do what you're recommending. What if people are feeling that burnout, which can come from a lot of different things? So that's like a whole thing you have to kind of unpack for yourself and probably get some support around that. Or we're trying to do that in our setting and we're getting pushback, from, we could fill in the blank, supervisor, team, management, the funders, the rules, so how do we do this work and have that authenticity and groundedness when perhaps not everyone has signed on to that memo? Because that's, and I know we'll say the only thing we can control is ourselves, because most people would already probably hear that. But what would you say to that when we're facing the things that we're trying to do it, but it's getting difficult?
Yeah, so I think we can always invite others to join us in our curiosity about what's going on inside. If somebody is trying to impress something on us that a decision that we don't feel right about, for instance, the boss or the culture of the workplace, it is up to us to acknowledge that we feel that, and to if it feels right, to invite others, even our boss, into our curiosity about that, and also accept that that might not be accessible for another person. So, but sometimes even the invitation makes a difference. And sometimes, again, I think we have to trust that our authenticity to ourselves is being modeled. It is being shown to the world, even if we don't have an outward validation that it's being seen. It's being seen. Yeah. And sometimes just the invitation, would you like to talk about this? Or do you mind if I just say something about how that's feeling for me? Or how are you? Maybe the boss is just really up against the wall and having a hard time. And you go, well, how's it going? Just, nice to see you. Did you have a nice weekend? Can I get you a coffee? Just all those kindnesses. Always come back to kindness, starting with yourself and that authenticity.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, I would say, have been in the field a while. We don't all join the field, with all our house in order. We don't always know what issues we may encounter or what get brought up. And so it's a journey. Like, we can't beat ourselves up for what we were like 10 years ago or what we may be like in 5 minutes, but, at any given moment, I think, to the extent you can, giving that grace. And at the same time, these are deep questions I think we have to think about in our profession. Like, the work is hard enough, and there's enough need out there that, what is it that's driving some of this context for any given person? Is it the team? Is it the agency culture? Is it where you are at in life? Is it the clientele that maybe you thought you should work with, but maybe it's not a great fit? Like, is it a skill set? Is it something else going on? So there's just so much, I think, when we're in this helping profession, that could really make or break our experience, and it's not any one thing necessarily, but it can be very influential. I think all of us have had those experiences, and it really can shape, how long we stay. Okay, I'm going to take one more question, then we're going to have to say farewell. You're talking about when our brain is developing, yet I think some of us have heard our brains don't fully develop till maybe mid-20s or that. I mean, I think maybe the question cannot be answered. Like, at what point will our brain adapt or change or be affected by trauma? And how can we also nurture that regardless of what we've been through? So
our brains continuously change.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's early childhood trauma, yes, and there's a window on that. But quick thing about a Harvard neuroscience study where they chose 8 people that had a lot of stress in their lives. They did MRIs on them. They looked at their hippocampus and their amygdala, 2 parts of the brain really involved in trauma. And then they got them to, and they found that, you know, those were all out of whack. And then they got them to do an 8-week meditation, mindfulness meditation, where they were just drawn inward to the breath and the silence and quietude that they did every day for 20 minutes. After that, they did an MRI and saw that those areas of the brain had changed dramatically. And the hippocampus was no longer like shrunken. It had just, the gray matter had grown back. The amygdala was down to a normal size instead of being engorged. So that goes to show that, yes, our awareness, our willingness to care for ourselves does alter our brain chemistry, can change our prefrontal cortex, allow us to make better decisions. And yeah, we can heal.
And that's, I think, a hopeful note, you know, that as we understand what we've been through, it can be overwhelming, but then also to know it's not the end of the story. You know, there's more to come, and you're living proof of that, as are many in our audience, I imagine. It's just we need to notice and not be reactive, like you said 100 times. So I want to thank you for all the time you spent with us today. I'm going to share a couple of events, including one from you coming up, which is trauma-informed supervision and resilience. So speaking of that topic, thank you, everybody who is here today. We really appreciate your time, and Rebekah, your energy. If you aren't getting our newsletters or announcements, please reach out to us, find us on social. And with that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's here. Oh no, is there another question? Link to the recordings. We will get that to you. Sorry, I see that in the Q&A. We will leave our room open a little bit so we can put that back in, so you can grab that from the chat. Any parting farewell, Rebekah? I know we'll see you in a week, but
I'm just, thank you for filling my heart today, Christina and Gabriel, and all of you who joined. Thank you for all the little hearts floating through the air. It's so sweet. And it just, it's just really right into my heart. I'm just blessed. And may you have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful day, just befriending yourself and loving yourself and continuously healing. Thank you.